Hey, what's up? John Sonmez from SimpleProgrammer.com. So I wanted to talk to you today about a topic I've been thinking about quite a bit. I haven't actually done a video on this, surprisingly, because I talk about this topic quite a bit in my life and when coaching people, which is the idea of the squeeze. And you might have heard me mention this situation before. I think I did a video talking about, I'm sure I've done some videos talking about, having like 3 months of living expenses for your job, like so you can say no, right? And being a professional, probably in soft skills, you've heard of that. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I talk about my book Soft Skills, you can check out here. But anyway, so the idea here is that you basically are in a squeeze situation anytime that some constraint forces you to make bad choices or choices that you wouldn't make before. So a classic example of a squeeze situation would be if an emergency came up, right? And you had to be somewhere, you had to fly somewhere, let's say, wherever, and you only found out about it like a day ago. And so you would be, as far as the airline is concerned, in a squeeze situation, because you would have to pay a very large ticket price, right? Because you'd only have a day's notice. And so that would be a squeeze situation, right? It's a situation where normally you should be able to pay much less of a price for the airline ticket, but because of circumstances, because you got put into a squeeze, probably not your fault in that case, you had to pay more, right? So there's a lot of times that happens in life. You can get into squeeze situations. Unintentionally, not because you're not prepared, but just because that's what happens, like the airline incident, something like that. But you could also put yourself in a squeeze situation in that same circumstance where basically, so if you knew you had to fly somewhere and you waited until the last minute to book a flight, you would have put yourself in a squeeze because now you got to pay an extremely high price and it's your fault, right? You're in a squeeze. So same thing happens in your job, right? If you don't have enough living expenses saved up and your boss tells you to do something unethical, well, you got to quit, or you're basically put in a squeeze. You're either going to risk losing your job or you're going to have to do an unethical choice, right? So a moral dilemma there. So that's a squeeze situation. There's so many of these squeeze situations. So what you want to do is you want to optimize so that you've got resources and everything allocated and you're prepared so you're never put in a squeeze situation, right? So that's why sometimes, it's good to be somewhat conservative in your, fiscally conservative, to be conservative in your judgment of things, your commitment of things, so you can't be put in a bind. That's another way of saying it. A squeeze and a bind are the same type of thing. I like to call it a squeeze because you feel like you're being squeezed, right? There's situations that happen where you've got one of those friends, right? We all have one of those friends, and maybe you're one of those people where they're always in trouble, right? Their car breaks down, and now because their car broke down, they couldn't get to work, and because they couldn't get to work, they missed their payment on their mortgage, and now they're behind, and now their kid got sick, and they keep on having this chain reaction of bad events, and they keep on blaming everyone. They have this victim mentality. And what it is that they don't have a lot of buffers. They're in a squeeze situation all the time, so their whole life is a freaking squeeze, and so they're paying those consequences all the time. So basically, if you want to avoid a squeeze situation in life, you have to have buffers. So you have to have financial buffers, you have to have physical buffers, right? You have to have mental buffers so that you don't lose your temper, you can control your emotions, you've got energy reserve, right? You've got to build up reserves and prepare yourself, right? Again, I like that quote a lot where it says, we don't rise, and I gotta attribute this quote someday here, but I heard it on Tim Ferriss's podcast, real good podcast, by the way. It's gotten so much better. But we don't rise to the level of our dreams, we fall to the level of our training. And so if you know that, then you will train yourself, you'll prepare yourself. You should hope for the best but prepare for the worst, right? That will avoid a squeeze. So anyway, I thought I would share that bit with you. If you've ever been in a squeeze situation, we all have. Sometimes it's not your fault, but most of the time it is our fault when we get into a squeeze, and we can prepare ourselves. Because if you're constantly in a squeeze situation, you end up obviously making poor choices, and you're forced into those poor choices, which can give you that victim mentality, because you don't see, you have to be thinking, just like in chess, 2 moves ahead. If you constantly are thinking at the same level, at the singular move, then you're gonna always see circumstances hitting you. You're not gonna know what caused it. But if you think 2 moves ahead, just like you're supposed to do in chess, right, or multiple moves ahead, you'll see that a lot of times you're putting yourself in the bind, you're putting yourself in the squeeze. And if you can stop doing that by creating buffers, you'll pay less for things, you'll have less bad choices that you are, quote, forced to make. So anyway, if you like this video, subscribe to the channel. If you want to support the channel, go check out the Patreon. I would appreciate it. And you can join the Facebook community there. So anyway, take care, and I'll talk to you next time.